right, so as promised, we are going to be making the small Beachy table that I described in the last tutorial. If I click this and open it, you can see that there is a very simple table that we've created using SketchUp. It's based on standard size lumber from the United States, so 2x4s, 1x4s, 1x2s, basically things that you can pick up at home improvement superstores. Actually, I'll go back because there's a different version of this one. Go back home, and I need to look at this one. This one doesn't have the trim pieces on the side. That's something that we can add later. Basically, we'll be creating these legs as components. In the last tutorial, we talked about how important components are if you're making something like this. We'll be duplicating and reorienting them. Then we'll create a shelf support. We'll add some boards to it and put them in something called an array. And then we'll add the top with the supports, and we'll do a different type of array. So basically, an array means that we're going to copy something. With that, let's go ahead and go back. I'll click on the hamburger up here, the little 3 lines, and go back home. Now, if you have not loaded SketchUp before, I guess we could go back to the SketchUp homepage. Let's start from the very beginning. We'll go to sketchup.com. Up here in the products section, we'll click here. Under the Explore Offerings, we'll choose SketchUp Free, and then click Start Modeling. If you have not launched SketchUp before like this, you might need to create an account or sign into your account. So once you get that done, we'll all be starting at the same place. Now we'll create new. So we need a new document. When we click that, you'll see that we are presented with Ty, that's the man that's in the center. And we will be using a lot of shortcuts in this one. So if you're not familiar with shortcuts, follow along closely or look at the previous video. I need to zoom in here at the origin, so I'll just use my scroll wheel mouse, or you can click over here at the last icon and maybe choose one of these magnifying glasses. There's 3 different ones. But we'll go ahead and use the scroll wheel mouse to zoom in. Rotate a little bit if we need to. And I'm in this orbit tool, which I got to by pressing O, which is the shortcut. I want to zoom in until Ty's feet are pretty big. And then I need to make a rectangle. I'll press the R key, which enables the rectangle tool. I'll click in the origin and move my cursor over to the right. Now within SketchUp, if you remember correctly, we're going to click and release the mouse, move our cursor over or move the mouse over, and then we're going to enter some dimensions. I'm exaggerating this rectangle here. I want one side to be very long and the other side to be short. If I look down at the right at my dimensions, you'll see that it says 4 5/8 inches on one side and then 1 inch on the other. That tells us that the longest dimension is the first one. So we'll type 3.5, 1.5. That represents the size of a standard 2x4 in the United States. So that's a 2 inch by 4 inch, but the actual dimensions are 3.5 by 1.5 inches. Press return at the end of that, and that is the size of our board. Then we can scroll out using our scroll wheel. I don't need Ty anymore, so we need to switch back to the Select tool, which is the arrow, or we can just press the space bar. Select Ty and press Delete or Backspace. Now I need to scroll in on this rectangle to raise this up into a board. We can do that using Zoom Extents, which is Shift-Z, which will fill the screen, and then we can just back out. Another thing I could do is I could use the Hand tool, so press H, and then just move this down a little bit. It's also called the Pan tool. Now I'm going to raise this into a height of 30 inches, which will be the height of the base of our table. To do that, I'll switch to the Push-Pull tool, which is this guy right here, which we can also access by pressing the P key. We'll click over here, release, and then raise up your mouse, make it go vertical, and then type 30 and press return. To view this entire piece again, we can use Shift-Z. and that will fill the screen with our piece. At this point, we need to combine these faces and edges into a component. To do that, we switch back to the Select tool by pressing the spacebar, triple-click, right-click, and choose Make Component. And this will be called Leg. Now we have a component that is named Leg. I'd like to make some changes to it, though. For example, I'd like to make a cut over here on the side. So let's go ahead and do that now. I press the O key so I can move this around. Then I'll add the Shift key to pan up. And then I'll zoom in. To make this cut, I want to measure 4 inches from the bottom, and then I need to open up this component for editing. Again, I'll press the spacebar just to kind of go back to the neutral setting. And I want the tape measure. Its shortcut is T. Press T, hover over the bottom edge, click and release, move up the blue axis, type 4 and press return. Now this guideline is outside the component. We need to open up the component to actually make this happen. So press the spacebar because we need to select the component, double click. You can see these dotted lines around the piece, which says that we're now open for editing. And we're going to draw a line from the middle of the bottom up to this intersection. To do this, we'll use the Line tool. If you hover over here, you can see it says Line, or we can just press L. That gives us this little pencil or the Line tool, and we'll hover over the bottom edge until we find a blue dot. That's the midpoint of the bottom. These are called inferences. Click on the midpoint, release the mouse, and then move your cursor up until it intersects the guideline and the side of the piece, and click again. Now we can use the Orbit tool, press O, rotate around to get a good view, and we'll use Push-Pull to push this back. Press P, click, and then push all the way to the back until it says On Face, and click again. Now we've deleted part of that leg. Press the spacebar and click on the background. We don't need this guideline anymore, so we can erase it. In the previous video, we used the eraser, but we can also use the Select tool. Click down here on the bottom right and go up to the upper left. This is called a crossing box. If it crosses the line, then we can use Delete or Backspace to get rid of it. There we have our first leg. Now we need to make a copy of this leg, so let's rotate around, press the O key and rotate, and we'll make a copy. If you remember from the previous video, that's found under the Move tool. So if you press M for Move, hover over this corner right here where it says Origin and Leg, and then look at the bottom. It says Option will allow us to copy. The other thing is if you're on a PC, that would be Alt. So press Option or Alt, just tap it, click, and move a copy over just anywhere, but I tend to go along the red axis. And now we just need to rotate this. We can zoom out and then zoom in at the top. And I know I want to rotate it counterclockwise. So as we hover over the top, you'll see that there are these little red plus signs. If you click on that, and then start moving it around and watch your angle down at the bottom, we want it to say angle 0. You could also type in 0, and that would work as well. Once you have the correct angle, click. If we zoom out, or you could just do a Shift Z, you can see that it's now oriented correctly. Now we just need to align these two pieces. So let's zoom in at the bottom. And I want to align this corner with this corner. Since the Move tool is still enabled, we'll just click on this corner here and move it over into position until it snaps right here with the other leg. And that creates a unit, essentially, of 2 legs. However, they're still individuals. Let's press the space bar, click on one, click on the other, and you can see that there are two different legs there. We'd like to combine those into another component called leg unit. Click over to the side, though, to deselect, and I'll show you another trick. While we're here, let's talk about selecting without using the Shift key. If I were to draw a box, start up here on the left and draw a box that maybe only goes about, halfway across that other one on the front, you'll see that I just selected whatever was enclosed in the box. Deselect by clicking on the side. If I draw a box all the way around both of these, it will select both. Click on the side again to deselect. There's another type of selection, though, that we just used a moment ago called a crossing box. If we click over here on the right and drag up to the left and just make a box that crosses these two items, you'll see that they're selected. This is called a crossing box. We used it a moment ago to delete one of the guidelines. But we can use either method to select. There's actually three methods. One is to draw a box around both items, one is a crossing box, and the other is using the Shift key. Now that both of these are selected, let's right-click and choose Make Component. Let's call this one Leg Unit and press Return. Now we have our legs. The next step is for us to make our guidelines for our table. We've done that before in the previous tutorial. To make a guideline, we're going to press T for tape measure, hover along the red axis, click, release, and move your cursor along the green axis, and type 20, and press Return. Now hover on the green axis, click and release, move along the red axis, and type 36, and press Return. That gives us the footprint, basically, of our model. So we're going to make a copy of this leg and move it back. We're in the move mode, so we pressed M. I'm hovering over this corner right here of the bounding box. I'm going to tap Option or Alt, click, and then move it back to the back corner. Now the orientation is incorrect here, so we need to flip this. And to do that, we can just go up here, right-click on the component, and choose Flip Along. Now, because we're flipping along the green axis, we want it to be mirrored on the green axis, we'll choose Flip Along Components Green. That oriented both of the legs correctly. Now we just need to select both of these objects. So you might say, which type of selection can I use? Well, if you wanted to use the crossing box, if you decided to use that one, you would press the space bar. But if you go from lower right to upper left, you're crossing a guideline, and it selected the guideline also. Deselect by clicking on the right. We do have an opportunity to come up here into this area here, click and drag, and just make a skinny rectangle, and that would select both as well. Remember, you can also use the Shift key. Now to make the copy, press M for the move mode. We'll grab these little corners right here at the bounding box. And I forgot to tap Option or Alt, but let's go ahead and add that. So I tap Option or Alt, come to the other side, and then we're going to flip along the red axis. So right-click, flip along red direction. And that oriented our legs the correct way. Press the space bar, and then press the O key and just take a look to make sure that it all looks correct, and it does. Those are the first components of our project. Let's go ahead and press the space bar and then add the Shift key to group all of these. Since we aren't going to be counting these, we could use a group, or we could just make it a component. Let's go ahead and right-click, Make Component, and call it Legs. There we have the legs of our table. The next step is to go in and create the braces. We'll zoom in over here on one of these legs, press the O key, and just kind of get a feel for the orientation. Since this leg is larger, I'll start out by making the board on this one. The other thing is I might need a guideline to bring this up a little bit above the cut. So let's bring this up to 5 inches above the floor. Press T for the tape measure, hover over this edge, click, move up, type 5, and press return. That's going to be the start of our board. We could use a rectangle here, or let's practice doing this another way. I'm going to press the H key to move this down into position. And this time I'm going to use a line tool. So press L for line. I'll come over here to this intersection where it snaps and click, release the mouse, and move along the green axis. Type 1.5 and press return. Move up along the blue axis and type 3.5 and press return. Now we don't have to measure the next one, we just need to make sure we go along the green axis and click, and then down the blue axis. And once we fill that in, we've created a rectangle that we can use push-pull. Tap P for push-pull. It's hard to see the little pattern, but it's there. We're going to click and release, and then move out. And this time we're using our scroll wheel to move all the way out. And zoom in over here on this leg so you can see we're actually navigating using our scroll wheel. We want this to stop even with the edge of this leg. So you can click on edge of leg to stop the drawing. You can zoom out, press O for orbit, and take a look and see what we've got, and that looks good. Now we need to turn this into a component, so press the spacebar, triple click, right click, and make it a component, and we'll call this long shelf brace. We need to copy this, so let's use the O key for orbit and get a good view where we can see the insides of both legs like this. To make a copy, we use the Move tool, so press M. We're going to line up this corner with this corner of our table. Tap Option or Alt. You'll see that there's now a plus sign on that cross. Click. Make sure that you go along the green axis, and once you see the green axis, add the Shift key. That locks it onto that axis. And then bring it over to this side. It's going to stop in that corner and click. Now we've moved a copy over to the other side. The next step is to create another board at the end. So we'll zoom in over here at the corner. This time we'll use a rectangle, so press R, click up in this upper corner, release, and then move over to approximately the size of that board. Look down at the bottom, and there is a short dimension first, a comma, and then 3.5. Because the only thing that we need to change is the first dimension, we just type 1.5 and press enter. There's our next 2x4. Press P, so we have push-pull, click, release, and then scroll out with your wheel. This time we're going to do something a little bit different. You can click on your scroll wheel to rotate until you can see the other side, release the scroll wheel, and then you can continue moving this over. We're going to use an inference. We could use the edge of this board, but we can also use the face of the board. By hovering on the edge or on the face, it's going to stop drawing where it meets that next board. Press the spacebar, triple click, right click, make it a component, and let's call this short shelf brace. We need to make a copy of this, so we'll zoom out. Again, you can use your scroll wheel, so press your scroll wheel, and we can get a view like this. Zoom in if you need to. Remember, to make a copy, press M, tap Option or Alt, and then let's grab this right corner here, click, move it over, and then click at the end. There we have all of our braces. Now you could guess that the next step is going to be to group these in some way, and it's going to be something we'll eventually count. So we'll create a component. Press the space bar, hold the Shift key, and add all of the braces together. Right-click, make a component, and call this Shelf Support. There we go. Now we will be creating another one of these up at the top. We need two, so let's go ahead and make that copy. We'll zoom in on a corner over here. I'd like to line up this corner with the top. You might need to also use the pan tool, which is H for the hand, to move it over. And then go back to the move tool. So press M, tap Option or Alt, choose this corner, click, move, and then click again. And now we have the supports for the top and the shelf. Next, let's go in and create the boards that are going to sit on the top here. Press the space bar, and let's do a little housekeeping over here. This time, let's use the eraser tool. So I'll press E for the eraser and click and drag. And I don't need these other guidelines anymore, so I can click and drag, click and drag. Press the line tool. We actually need to go draw something real quick, so let's press L for line, and then zoom in on this corner. We could try and use a rectangle, but it's going to be easier to draw out here with the pencil or the line tool. So click on this corner, move up. This time it's going to be 0.75 of an inch, so 0.75, and press return. Move your cursor over to the left on the red axis and type 3.5 and hit return. Come down on the blue axis until it meets the edge and click, and then go back and click again. Once it fills in with a face, that tells us that we have something that we can use the push-pull tool on. Again, we're going to press P for push-pull, click and release, move over towards this other board, and we can also try and use our scroll wheel to navigate. What we're looking for is either the edge of the leg or the face of this other board. You're using those inferences. Go ahead and click. Now we have a board that we can turn into a component. So press the space bar, click 3 times, right-click and make this a component, and we'll call this lower shelf board. We need to copy this board and move it to the other side, but we need even spacing between these. I don't know if it's going to fill the entire space, but my guess is there's going to be a little bit of space between each board. Press O so you can orbit. We'll zoom in a bit. I need to make a copy, so I'll press the M key and tap Option or Alt. And I'm choosing this corner right here, so I'll click and move the board over. Once I see the dotted red line, I'll add the Shift key to lock it in and move a copy over here until it's on this other board, and then click again. Don't do anything else. Now I'm going to divide the space between those two boards. So I'll do a / and type 5 and press return. Now, if I was storing blankets or something on here, this might be appropriate. But I'd like more. So let's type / again, /7 and press return. And let's see if I could even go one more. So we'll do / 8 and press return. And that gives me some nice spacing between those boards. But you'll see that once we've copied a board to the end, we can divide the space between it by doing a / and a number. Press the space bar and then zoom out. If we'd like to group these, the easiest way to do this at this point is to press the Shift key, click, and select all of the boards. We could use a crossing box, but there's too many other things. Right-click, make a component, and let's call this bottom shelf top. I guess that's a kind of an oxymoron, but anyway, that gives us our shelf. Press O and navigate around, and everything looks good. Let's go ahead and group these things though. So press the space bar, hold the Shift key. We've grouped the top and the bottom bracing. We'll right click, make a component, and call this shelf. So there we have the bottom shelf. Now let's tackle the top. We'll press O and orbit to get a view something like this. And this time we're going to make a board, same as we did before, but it's going to go the other direction. The easiest way to do this is to use a rectangle, although you could use the line tool. So press R for rectangle, click on this corner, release, move this over to the other side, and we want to look at the dimensions, and it says 3 foot, 5 in this case. Well, we only want to change what's after the comma. So we can type comma 3.5 and press return. That gives us 3.5 inches wide, and then we just need to raise it up 3/4 of an inch. Press P for push-pull. It looks a little strange, but just go with it. We'll click and release and then move up a certain amount, it doesn't matter what, and type 0.75 and press return. Now we need to create a component from this. So press the space bar, triple click, right click, make component, and let's call this top board. On this one, we're going to duplicate the board again. We'll do it a little bit differently this time. Since we're making a copy, press the M key and then tap Option or Alt and choose your corner. So I'm going to select this corner here and make a copy that lines up here. So click on the corner, move it over until it snaps, and click again. Then don't do anything else. Now we'll type X and let's type 7 just for grins and press return. That gives us too many boards, so we can type X again and maybe 5 and press return. That gives us a total of 6 boards. I'm going to press my scroll wheel and rotate around, and that looks good. It's not centered, but that's an appropriate number of boards. Press the space bar, use the Shift key, and then click each one of the boards on the top. Let's make this into a component called tabletop. So we'll make component after right-clicking and call it tabletop. Press return. Now we need to center this. I'll teach you another trick with that. We'll use the O key, the shortcut for orbit, and I need to zoom in here and get access to this point in the middle. So we have a total of 6 boards, where this board is right here in the middle between the 3rd and 4th board. So we'll zoom in. This time we'll press the M key. We're going to be moving. And the reason we're zooming in is because if we hover over one of these little red crosses, it'll want to rotate. We need to hover over the end point. So we'll click and then move it side to side, but it's hard to see, but we're looking for that green dashed line and when it says on green axis. When you see that, press the Shift key. Zoom out with your scroll wheel while holding the Shift key. And you can see we can move it along the green axis, but this time we're using an inference. I'm still holding the Shift key, and I'm looking for that blue dot, which tells me it's the center of that board. And when I get there, I click. Now the tabletop is perfectly aligned with the table. I just need to do one last thing, which is to stretch these boards out on both ends. You'll remember in the previous tutorial what we did is we had to open up a component for editing, and we're going to do that now. So press the space bar, double-click on the tabletop, select any one of the boards, and you can see it has a bounding box, so we need to open it. Double-click. Now we can get to this end and use push-pull. Tap P for push-pull, click, move towards you, type 0.5 and press return. Now we can use the orbit tool. Press O, go to the other side, press P to go back to push-pull, and now you can just double-click. So it retained the amount that we pulled the other end, which was 1/2 inch, and it applied it to this end as well. Now let's practice closing a component since there's 2 ways to do it. Right-click, close component, right-click, close component. Now we have the table. Navigate around so you can practice with whatever method you want. So I'll rotate. You can use the hand tool. You can add the shift key, but let's just get a good view. And I think what I want to do right now is copy this shelf and move it up. To do that, I need to measure maybe a space here. I'll press T for tape measure. And I'd like to give this, let's say, 4 inches. So I'll hover on this edge, click, and move my cursor down. Type 4 and press return. Now I just need to select the shelf down below. Press the M key. And I don't need this to be on a corner. I want this to be on an edge. So I'll tap Option or Alt, click here, move this up, and it needs to be on the blue axis. And if I'm having a hard time with that, I can actually move it down until I see the blue axis, press the Shift key, and then move it up until it snaps with this guideline and click. I need to clean up this guideline here, so I'll press the space bar, click and drag a crossing box, and then press delete. Now I'll press O, and I can navigate around. So that is our little table. Let's paint it before we go much further. So to do that, we can use the paint bucket, which is over here on the left. You can click on it, or the shortcut is B for bucket. When we open up the bucket, it also opens up our materials here on the right-hand side. Right now, the home button is clicked, but we'll click on the search one, which will give us the ability to choose some different materials, including wood. So click on the wood section and then scroll down, and we'll just choose one of these wood colors right here. I'm going to choose the second row, third one over. Now, if I were to click on the top of one of the shelves, you can see that it painted the whole shelf. Let's say that I want the top to be wood, but the bottom to be painted. So let's undo. Press the space bar, and we'll just open up this component for editing, click on our wood sample, and then just paint the top. You'll see that because these are components, that it painted the shelf on both. Press the space bar and deselect. Select the color again, and let's go up and paint the top, since it's not combined with anything yet. And now we can go back and choose some colors. So if we scroll up, one of the options here is colors, and then you could choose some different colors. I actually kind of like the white as it is, but let's make it a pale gray. So I'll grab a gray. If I click on this one, it's going to paint the bottom, paint this one, paint the legs, and then paint the underneath of the top. If it causes you problems, you sometimes have to break open the components to paint, but in this case, it actually worked just fine. Press the space bar and admire your work. To close the paint swatches on the right, use the arrow. Now we just need to combine this into one unit. And to do that, let's use our crossing box instead of trying to select everything. Before we do that, though, let's double check, make sure that things are grouped correctly. So I have our legs, I have a shelf, another shelf, the top, and then the shelf support. Let me go ahead and group these at the top. I'll use the Shift key and select the top, make sure the support is selected. Right-click and choose Make Component. And let's call this Tabletop Unit and press Return. Now deselect by clicking on the right, and let's use the crossing box this time. Click and drag from the lower right to the upper left and just make sure you cross everything. Right-click Make Component, and let's call this Beach Table. Press Return. We've now created the table that we wanted to in the first tutorial. Let's do one last thing though. In this case, I'd like to share this. This is such a beautiful piece. I'd like to share it with the 3D warehouse. Over on the right-hand side, I'm using this fourth button. If I click it, it opens the 3D warehouse. If you're logged in, you can use this upload button. Click it. It says your model must be saved, so we'll cancel here. Go over here and we'll save it. Purge the unused items. Choose the SketchUp folder. Let's see, I was using Class Exercises Colorado, and I'll name this Beach Table. And press Return. Now that it's been saved, I can upload it. So we'll click here to upload the model. You can determine whether you would like this to be public or if it's going to be private. Go ahead and choose private for now. You could call this the Beach Table Gray if you want, and then write something about it, blah, blah, blah. If this is something that somebody could purchase, like if you were creating a piece of furniture you would want somebody to be able to download, you can also give it a URL for like a product description. Once you're done, click Upload. It will upload the model. And now it will be viewable shortly under your login. You can click over here and choose My Content. And once you're logged in, it will show you it's uploading this current one, but I've uploaded things in the past. This is a place that you can save your models where you can use them later. Go ahead and close this window. And with that, we are done. So if you have any questions, be sure and put them in the comments down below. And hopefully this was a helpful tutorial. I'll be making more.